street one day. A pretty lady looked at me and said her diamond watch had stopped cold dead. And I said, does anybody really know what time it is? Does anybody really care? If so, I can't imagine why. We've all got time enough to cry.
That song came out in 1969, and that line came from the musicians getting together, and they're looking at the music, and one of them says it has 4/4 and 5/4 and 8/4 and 9/4. There's all kinds of different rhythms. And somebody turns to the other and says, does anyone know what time this is? And it stuck. And that question, does anybody really know what time it is, was important in 1969 when I was in college, because we were in the midst of protests and thinking, and it was just a marvelous time. In fact, I was just looking back the other day, I was thinking about that. Sherry and I met in September of 1968, and we got married 2.5 years later. I know now why my parents were so worried about us. Good grief, you hardly know each other. But the time was just full and exciting, and it zipped along, and there was so much we did. There were getting together and talking about things and learning new things and thinking new things, and all-night bull sessions. You know, we'd sit there until the darkest moment of the day, about 4 o'clock in the morning, when even the street lights almost go out. It's so dark. And then the birds would start their chirping. And it wasn't just a little bit of singing. It was a cacophony of clatter as they chirped back and forth, because I'm sure what they were saying is, do you know what time it is? It's the darkest hour of the day, and yet the birds know that the sun is going to rise, and a new day will be with us. Does anyone really know what time it is? We have several kinds of time. We don't think about this. We do know that time can go fast, and it can go slow. It goes so slow when you're in college. You don't realize it because it's going fast at the same time. Time goes incredibly slow when you're young and you're waiting for Santa Claus to arrive on Christmas Eve, right? At the very same time, there are people in your house with whom time is rushing by because they're discovering some assembly acquired means a lot of assembly required, and it has to be done. That's chronological time. That's Chronos in the Greek. The word Chronos is the tick-tock time. We like to divide it up, with a metronome, with a clock. It sets everything at the same speed, so the time itself moves differently. For us, subjectively, the clock ticks it away. The people in Kenya told us that they liked a lot about Western culture, but the one thing they did not want to do was divide their lives up in small chunks and then sell them off, like we do. That time clock, ka-chunk, and you basically sell your life for those hours. Tick-tock time. And it moves along. And yet, the Greeks had another word for time, and this word is Kairos, and it means the appointed time. This is the word that Paul was using in the Scripture. This is the word that Jesus is using when he says the time is upon us. He's not talking about tick-tock time. He's talking about the appointed time. This is the moment now. When they talk about Jesus coming in the Bible, they're not talking about some moment in the future. They're talking about the appointed time. Jesus said, don't be worrying about the time, the day, the date, the year that the Son of Man will come. God will take care of it, because we're not talking about tick-tock time. We're talking about the appointed time. And it will make all the difference in the world. In Christianity, we often say that Jesus Christ is the end of the world. And there's another word that has a couple of different meanings. We have end as a completion. So when Jesus comes, it's the end of the world. But Jesus came, Christ came. And how can 2,000 years ago be the end of the world? Was because end means two different things. It means the end, the completion. It also means the purpose. The ends don't justify the means. That kind of end is not the completion. It's the purpose. And the problem with the ends trying to justify the means is that each of the means is an end unto itself. So if you're doing something that is of questionable virtue or morality on the way to a good goal, well, what you did is an end too. And it cannot be justified just because of some goal out there. The end is the purpose of the world. The purpose of life is Jesus Christ. Oh, we got a lot of other purposes. We love to have other purposes. We're real quick to have our job, the project we're on, the kids, purpose of our lives. Some people, it's money. Boy, if I could just get enough wealth, I would be somebody. There's one fella who did very, very well, but he was wondering how was he going to get it, with him to heaven. He wasn't sure what they used. They used, euros or yen or dollars or pounds. So he just had it changed to gold. Ingots of gold, and has his coffin lined with these ingots of gold. He gets to the pearly gates, and of course, there's customs there. He's carrying these suitcases, heavy suitcases. St. Peter opens them up, and he says, "Pavement? You brought pavement?" The purpose of life is Jesus Christ. Also reminds me of the wealthy guy who made his soon-to-be widow promise she'd put all of his money in the casket with him so he could take it with him. And she did. She wrote a check. The purpose of life is Jesus Christ, and the time is the appointed time, not the tick-tock time. We live through the tick-tock time. God doesn't. God is outside of that. God is beyond that. God, the past and the future are already true. Of course he knows everything. And of course you have free will, because while God knows everything, God also knows that you are freely making your decisions. And it's just like I hand out some DVDs. When you hold that DVD in your hand, you have the whole movie. That's how God holds the world in his hand. God's got the whole movie. Now, when you put it on, you watch it frame by frame, minute by minute. And everything unfolds. And that's what we live through. But it's the whole story. Is what God is giving us at the appointed time. Jesus is that appointed time. Jesus Christ. A lot of people in the history of the world have come and told us all these good things. Been great teachers. Jesus was the greatest teacher. Jesus told us to clothe the naked and house the homeless and feed the hungry and visit the hurting. And so did Buddha and Muhammad and all kinds of wise people. And we know it's true. You know it's true. You know that you should do unto others the kind of things you'd like someone to do for you. Not that they'll do them for you, but that this is what you would like, and so you give that. And when you give a gift, don't you give a gift that is something like what you might like if you were them? Or the other way, don't do to other people, including your spouses and your siblings, what you don't want someone to do to you. If you don't want somebody to whack you, don't whack. If you don't want somebody to laugh at you and make fun of you, don't do that. That's what Paul is saying, is that as we as we are in that appointed time, that Kairos, it is time to live as if that other person were yourself. And isn't that what Jesus said? Love your neighbor as yourself. Imagine that person being you. Imagine you being that person. Put yourself inside of their head. And then think of all the garbage that's gone before, and all of the successes they've had, and all of the future that they fear and they hope for. Just guess at that. And you suddenly realize that person is you. The particulars may be different. The tick-tock may be different. But the appointed time of their life is exactly the same. We try to do that. And we fail. All these teachers through all these years have told us what to do, and we know what to do, but we don't do it. And if that's all Jesus is, then Jesus is a failure too, because nothing changed. If Jesus is just the great teacher, the great example, we still can't get it done. There's another word in Greek. We talked about Chronos and Kairos, and there is also Christos, Christ, and it means anointed. Anointed. Like the Hebrews would anoint their king. And he would be connected to God, and something about the way he did things and the way he was changed everything for everybody. Jesus, the Christos, is the anointed time. And it's not because we succeed or fail at doing what he says, but that he is within us, and we are the anointed. And we are at the appointed place and time. And everything is real. I just read something by Joseph Campbell. He does comparative mythology, and he says that, he's talking about art, but he could have said this: Christ makes the difference between the richness of the experience and just the assurance of meaning. It's the experience of Christ itself that makes life what it is. It is Christ, the anointed, that brings us to the appointed, and then we can know truly what time it is.